Hello?
Hey, Jack.
Hi, Dan. Hi, Alicia.
Buzz, Roy.
I'll come closer. Never been afraid of women.
It's good.
Afraid of a few other things.
Did you need the?
Yeah, please.
Nice.
Second, just to give you. Anybody else want to agenda? You got mine.
Yeah.
An agenda?
Huh?
Come down, take one touch and.
Thank you.
Okay.
Pass it down.
We have today, February 9th, special meeting Board of Selectmen. Christine taking notes on our attendance. We have Alicia, Jack, and myself all here. With us for a consultation is Town Attorney Charles Chip Roback. We also have some members of our Building Oversight Committee, Bud and Roy. And also some members of our WPCA, Dave Rosengren, Todd Brazier, Chair, Steve Hanwright. The Moores are here, David Grimwell, Chair, John, Town Clerk, Danny. Did I miss anybody? Daria? Hey, Dan. So, item number 1 on our agenda, and this is a special meeting, so we are unable to change our agenda today. Usually we easy going around here, the special meetings are a little bit different. We have Chip here to discuss our voting referendum ordinance that we've had some discussions on. Before we get started, Christine's been here for a while. 6:33, a couple minutes ago. Just before we get started with Chip, I want to have Christine, who's been here for a little while, longer than any of the selectmen, discuss a little bit of her knowledge of how the town has handled the budget process for the last 10 or 12 years that she's been here. It has been fairly regular in procedure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Every year it's pretty much the same process. Budget season begins, well, budget preparations begin actually in January. People start discussing their budgets. We get letters out to boards and commissions, we ask for input. The first selectman, whoever it is at the time, meets with various people to discuss their budgets. Everything culminates where a budget is finally drafted and presented to Board of Finance, usually at a Saturday meeting. Sometimes it's done at a Board of Finance meeting prior to that, but the normal course of action is to present the proposed budgets to the Board of Finance at a Saturday meeting workshop.
Region 7 comes down, Board of Ed comes in.
Yeah, Board of Ed,
General
Region 7, General Government, usually a few hours long of a meeting. And then the Board of Finance normally meets after that to kind of discuss what was presented and decide whether or not they want to go forward with the proposed budgets or whether they want the budgets changed. And then eventually we get to a public hearing that is publicized in the newspaper as per Connecticut State Statutes. The Board of Finance publishes a notice of a public budget hearing, at which point they encourage residents to come to the budget hearing where the budgets are presented to the public, and that includes the Region 7 budget, the local education budget, the town government budget. And at that point in time, public comment is welcomed and encouraged for people to stand up and discuss what they'd like to see changed, what they'd like to see modified, make recommendations to the Board of Finance. Following that Board of Finance hearing, public hearing, the Board of Finance meets again, and they decide whether or not they want to have any changes occur to the budgets that were presented, or whether they're going to let them go ahead as proposed. If they want changes, everybody scrambles to hold another quick meeting to make adjustments to their budget, to get them back to the Board of Finance again for review. If there's no changes, things proceed where the Board of Selectmen actually propose a date and time for and there's a little confused about this, but all the time I've been here, we hold an annual budget meeting and an annual town meeting, 2 different meetings. The annual budget meeting is held at a certain time and date that is chosen by the Board of Selectmen, which adjourns, and then the annual town meeting follows the budget meeting, so it's two separate meetings. The past couple of years, I don't think we've actually had an annual town meeting due to the fact that we've had special town meetings just prior to that, and there's been no business to conduct at the annual town meeting. But we have gone forward with the annual budget meeting. However, prior to the annual budget meeting, the selectmen have, in accordance with Connecticut General Statute, section 7-7, removed item number 1 from the call of the annual budget meeting. And removing that item number 1 is consideration and discussion of the budget, and they adjourn it to referendum. And then you have your budget meeting, which normally somebody gets up and just says the item has been removed from the meeting, and they adjourn to referendum. And you have your annual town meeting, if there was items on the annual town meeting, and everybody goes home. And then the budget referendum happens about 14 days after the budget meeting. Timeframes can change, 7 days, 10 days, depending on what the selectmen decide.
Okay, that's pretty much my understanding of it. Is everybody on the same page here? So Chip, we have you here today to discuss this old ordinance. It's been in place for 20 to 25 years. You've got the dates. It supposedly requires the town to vote on its budgets at referendum. Correct. We're here, selectmen are here today. There's been some talk about it with you to discuss what happens if we choose to move forward with a repeal effort, and if in fact the voters choose to vote to repeal. And it's my understanding that a repeal effort has been taken on in the past and has failed. So we're here to quiz you a little bit, get a little information from you, and give you access to the selectmen to ask and answer. I have some questions here. And first and foremost, the thing that comes to my mind is, if we propose a repeal effort and the people of the town choose to repeal this ordinance, what in fact will change in our budget process?
Well, the one thing that most certainly will not change is that the selectmen will retain the statutory authority to remove any item, including a budget, from the town meeting to a referendum. That power does not arise from the ordinance, but from an independent state statute.
So anything that were moved to a town meeting, any initiative, if the selectmen shows that that was not the appropriate venue, they wanted a larger audience, they wanted the convenience of an all-day referendum, we have the ability to take any item off that agenda and move it.
Yes.
Okay. So, and sometimes I think it's semantics, but I get confused of whether or not this ordinance has ever been used. Because I know that I voluntarily vote to go to referendums. I enjoy referendums. Every year that I've had a position with a budget authority, I've always voted to go to an all-day referendum. If we continue to voluntarily take the actions, as Christine has just stated, that we want the people of the town of New Hartford to vote at a referendum, and we follow this same thing, we all volunteer to do it. I'm correct to assume no process will change.
No. And just as in passing, I just point out that there is no process really established in the ordinance. There's no directive to the selectmen to do anything. It just says that it shall go. It doesn't say how it shall go to referendum.
Okay. Leads me to the next question. What happens if we choose not to go to referendum?
Then it's
Assuming that the ordinance has been repealed.
then you have an item to be voted on, an agenda item to be voted on at a town meeting pursuant to statute, which there is, and I didn't bring my tender line, well, I do have it, but there is specific language regarding the budget adoption process relative to what happens at a town meeting when considering a budget. I believe, without having it right in front of me, that there is an inference that certain items of the budget can be reduced, nothing can be increased.
So,
Okay. Is it nothing can be reduced and nothing can be added to the Board of Finance budget either? Isn't that true? You can't add a new item.
I believe I read that as well.
Yeah.
That's, yes,
You can't increase it
and you can't add anything.
and you
new.
can't add anything,
That's correct.
so that,
so it's
we're
all
not
going
getting a
one way.
snowmobile or anything, it sounds like.
We're gonna talk about capital later.
Brought this back? Yeah.
Well,
Okay, but
let me follow that with a question. Chip, if we were to go to a town meeting,
And by the way, it does not specifically authorize reductions, it's just an inference you draw from the way around the structure.
well, considering the way we have our budget now, I mean, we have this multi-page document, we have town hall that has individual line items for every single employee. Would you have recommendations for us on presentation of a budget? Would you recommend that we continue forward with this document, or would it change? Would you, I mean, the thing that highlights to me is that you have individual employees with individual salary line items, union employees that are, you know, have been here for years, that have collective bargaining rights, that it could go upstairs and somebody could make a motion and then get a second and have a vote to reduce a line item where, I mean, would it be safe to say that you would have a recommendation that in some instances, perhaps salary line items would be lumped together? There would be some level of consolidation, and this document that we've been using for years might become more of an informational supplement?
Well, first of all, I don't think my input would, I would term it as a recommendation, because it's really just a policy question as much as it is a legal question on that. You defer, or I defer to the judgment of the elected officials. If you want legal input on what you could do or couldn't do, one thought would be that we could reduce the number of line items that go into the formal budget that is set forth by the Board of Finance for adoption. So that you don't have, in theory, various positions which would be there to be dealt with on an individual basis. And you have large groupings within which there are multiple items that were not broken out in detail.
What about petitions? You have petitions, we have this timeline, the selectmen get involved in a process where, you know, the selectmen have voted to take the budget to referendum, but someone comes to the town hall with a petition that says, no, we want a town meeting.
Well, the process at that point becomes pretty circular, because regardless of whether a town meeting is called by the selectmen or initiated through petition, the selectmen still have the right to take any item on any agenda and move it to a referendum. So you get a petition, you have a budget at a town meeting, it gets removed. You have a second petition, it gets removed,
And you end up going to a referendum.
or you end up doing nothing.
All right. Anybody else have any questions, you guess?
Well, that's not true, actually. The first referendum that was called would actually occur. At that point, there'd be a vote, and then you would just, if there was somebody, there was some sense that you wanted to reconsider, then you just keep moving to the referendum until it stopped.
It sounds like 1990, when we had that happen in town, where the budget went to referendum and it was defeated at least on 3 occasions that I recall that year. So it does become, you know, that's something, and Dan, if I may, it seems like, you know, it's good that we're talking about the issue, because it seems like the issue has been, you know, kind of out there for about 21 years, where no one has defined, you know, the way it should be. Because in in 1990, the town put in ordinance number 90-1. So I guess it was the first one they did in 1990. But, you know, there's been so many different interpretations of it for 21 years. I think it's good that we're, you know, I'd like to be part of the Board of Selectmen that resolve the issue as we go forward, because it seems to be, and, you know, so that's, you know, I bring up the issue, the issue of discussing the budget, Counselor, in relationship to, you know, can we discuss, can we have a referendum on the budget and have a town vote on the budget? Can we have both?
No.
So that's why,
Just to clarify, what removing an item from the agenda from the town meeting to the referendum, what that really means is that item is not on the agenda. When you walk into that room for a town meeting that night, there's nothing to discuss, there's nothing to vote on. The only issue is the date and time for the referendum for that former item on the agenda to be voted upon.
We're just changing the vehicle of how it will be considered from
How it's
Group
voted
in-
upon.
how it's voted on, whether it be in this building by as many people as the fire marshal can fit upstairs, or whether it's as many people can go to the firehouse and town hall all day long, with the convenience of timing on their side.
Mhm.
I don't know that the way you've been operating is in violation of any of the state statutes by removing the item. As Dan has said, you're just giving it a greater participation rate by opening up to referendum. There is vehicles for the public to come and voice their concerns if they feel that the taxes are too high, too low. It's always, most of the discussions, I think, center around the Board of Education budgets mainly. You know, that, you'll see the vast majority of the discussions based on that, which the town really has no,
I don't disagree with you. I think
Yeah.
that, you know, it's, you know, the council used the word circle. You know, there is, you know, I don't
You wanna
I
sound
don't
circle.
necessarily disagree with you that there's plenty of opportunities to advocate for, you know, the change in the budget before, you know, before it gets presented to the Board of Selectmen. So, but, you know, I think that we're a little remiss in not going back to the original 90-1, you know, where, you know, it seems like my interpretation is that had the Board of Selectmen in 1990 had the benefit of the knowledge that we have now, they wouldn't have had to make an ordinance 90-1. Because they already had the power to take the item off the agenda.
right,
I don't think they were volunteering to go that rate, I think they were pretty much compelled. My question for you, Chuck, is this, is that if we are all voting voluntarily, as we have for how many years, have we done anything illegal in any way, shape, or form to act within our rights through what you said it was statute 70 to do this?
No, on two separate grounds, I can defend that. One is you have that authority in the statute. Regardless of what your intent is or why you did it, the fact of the matter is that you did it. Number two, although Jack Pickard did opine back in 1990 that he thought that the ordinance was invalid, and I agree with his interpretation, neither he nor anyone in this town has the authority to invalidate the ordinance as a matter of law. The only person who can do that is a judge. So until this ordinance was presented to a court and a judge ruled it invalid, it stands. So,
Whether or not it's used
right,
or not.
so whether you were following the ordinance because it still stands, or whether you were acting independently under your statutory authority, you're legit on both counts.
Yeah, and if I might say, I mean, I agree that it's highly unlikely that anyone in the town is gonna challenge the legality of a budget based on 90-1. How far, I don't think they get very far with that, do you? I mean, from what you just said, I mean, it doesn't,
my trade would call that a fishing expedition.
Yeah, right, no, I agree with you, I agree with that. So,
Well, I think the question for the selectmen is this, I mean, I've been doing this budget things for 10 or 12 years now, with Region 7 or here. Every year I vote voluntarily to go to referendum. It's not about the right of voting per se at the town meeting as much as it is the darn timing. You know, everybody's gotta be there in the room at 7 PM. If you miss the discussion or it goes through quick, you show up 15 minutes late, the vote's over. You're ticked off that you missed it. The convenience of a referendum, and I know that it costs money, allows people in the days of, you know, two-wage earner families with kids and dogs and after-school activities and everything, it offers them convenience. I plan on doing the same thing as long as I'm here. I'm voting to take votes to referendum. I just see it as something that our town has come to expect. And if we were to choose to change course, I think we'd have to engage in some level of an education effort to let people know that we're gonna change things. Because I think people have become, whether or not they know about this ordinance or not, they know about the past practice of we're voting. I get more people asking me about, well, geez, when is that vote? And I tell them it's the same week every year, you know? You know, first week in May, isn't it? But I think that if we're talking about doing this and we're talking about doing, I think we should get a proposal together to modify our budget. I think we should do a mailing, because you're talking about how people vote on budgets and the town's money, and I think people are gonna be interested if we're considering changing things. If we're guaranteeing them that this is going to a referendum every year and it's gonna stay the same way, and people understand that they're gonna get the all-day voting in the referendum, and they understand and expect it, I think that's fine. But if we're talking about the possibility of changing it, I think we should maybe do a mailing, do a little bit of education, and it may be something that we might even wanna consider, should we choose to go that route of actually voting. And here's another question for you, Chip, is if we should choose to repeal this effort, would there be anything from precluding us to actually putting that through to a referendum?
The repeal itself? Yeah, I could probably even take it to referendum.
Okay. So that everybody's given fair warning. Bundle it with another vote, try to save some money.
So you said though that the judge has to rule the ordinance is invalid, or we have the other option of just repealing the ordinance?
Yes, that would be the two ways.
We can pitch it, we can't guarantee it, it's gotta go.
No, that's what I'm saying.
It's gotta, you
Yeah,
gotta go to referendum.
but the two ways to expunge it from your legislative enactments are in court order or by an act of the town meeting, whether adjourned or not to referendum.
Well, I'm interested in what you guys think. Would you be of similar mind that we should be continuing to go to referendum?
Absolutely, I think it gives, like I said, a greater participation rate of all the taxpayers in town, all the voters in town. If having this ordinance around is just gonna keep muddying the waters up every year, then we should address it and do something with it, whether we repeal it or have the judge deem it to be invalid. Sounds like that would cost money, to have the voters repeal it. I just don't know what would be the right time frame to do that, though. I don't know that we should have them do it before this budget year or after the budget year, and do it coincide with another town meeting that we might happen to have. I'm concerned that it just won't be clear to everyone what we're trying to accomplish. And I wouldn't want people to think, okay, does that mean I have to go to the town meeting and then they miss the all-day referendum? Although that might happen, I don't know if that would happen. Or just give up their hands and say, I'm not sure what to do this year.
What are they doing?
Yeah, so I don't wanna create any confusion for anyone this year. I'd rather it just be clean on its own merit.
All right. Jack?
the town budget has gone to referendum for the previous 21 years, is that correct? Yeah, then. I think that, well, you don't need to change that. I think there's some people are, looking for an opportunity to, since it doesn't sound like we can do both. And given the fact that we, the best case scenario, I guess, to build on what you said a little bit, Alicia, the best, to even more participation would be able to have both, be able to have people, discuss the budget at the town meeting and also vote on it at a referendum. But if that's not possible, I would prefer the referendum. So, again, it's such a,
Jack, you can have a discussion,
then.
if it's on the agenda. You just can't take if the motion of the selectmen is to move the action of the vote to a referendum, you can still put an additional agenda item and say, have another discussion. We've already had 8 or however many meetings to date at that point, I think.
Right.
People have gone through the entire
No,
process.
and I'm able to see that if the majority of the selectmen so desired, then we could have a 9th discussion or an
Yeah.
8th discussion about the budget. So I think, it's probably best that, the referendum has been in place for 21 years, when we get to that town meeting, I might be the one to try to offer that 9th opportunity to discuss the budget. But it doesn't seem like, there's, it seems like to me that if people have this, concern to change the budget, there are a lot of, like you say, there are there'd be the 7 or 8 other opportunities to advocate through the boards and commissions as well as through the Board of Finance. So,
Like anything, we all would agree on an agenda for that meeting. We all vote on it and we do it. That's-
we do seem to get pretty good participation at the referendums, considering. So, and if it's a really, really big issue, I think that the Board of Finance, I know some of the members are here, I would hope that they would be, amenable to working with whatever board or commission or whatever budget item that really needed to be changed. If it was a situation of, in the best interest of everybody in the town, I'm sure the Board of Finance would probably look at that pretty closely. I just don't, I don't get the feeling that, we're trying to, the Board of Finance is trying to slide anything by anybody.
No, there's tons of opportunity to
Yeah,
participate.
so it's,
The difficulty is, as I said, now that we have this procedure in place, the Board of Finance has already acted, you get to that last discussion. A lot of times when you ask, at that last meeting, because it's already been decided that it's gonna go to a referendum, people ask us, well, geez, why did the Board of Finance choose that this was the level of funding for this? And if it's not there, you can have it. You try to give a description the best you can.
but I would stand with Alicia that, it might be the opportunity to bundle the repeal of 90-1 at an upcoming referendum, so that it's not there anymore for everybody to, it's just not there anymore. Then we would just rely on the state statute and go forward with that, and not have to, have it be an issue like it has been for 21 years.
All right, well, we can take this up and continue. We have an aggressive agenda today. We have other people that are expected to start up with us at 7 o'clock. Chip, thank you for coming. Appreciate your time as always.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, is there going to be an opportunity for the public to ask questions?
There's no opportunity for an item on this
That's why it's a
agenda.
special
It's a
meeting.
special meeting.
So we don't have access to the attorney to be able to ask the questions that we have.
No. Mr. Rohrbach is the attorney for the selectmen. He is
For
answering
the
our
town,
questions.
I believe Mr. Rohrbach is the town's attorney.
That's right, and he responds to the consultation questions of the selectmen. Thank you, Mr. Rohrbach. Okay, second on our agenda,